In 1953, a single advertisement sold more than a car. It sold an entire way of life, and you've been paying for it ever since. They called it the American Dream, a promise that if you worked hard, you'd win. But here's the part they never told you. This dream wasn't discovered. It was manufactured by corporations, by media, by a system that knew exactly how to keep you chasing. Every smiling family in those glossy ads was a carefully placed illusion. But the real question isn't what they sold. It's who built the dream and why they needed you to believe it so badly. The American dream didn't appear out of thin air. It was engineered, carefully, strategically, and with one clear goal: to turn hope into the most profitable product ever created. Right after World War II, the United States stood at a crossroads. Millions of soldiers were coming home, desperate to rebuild their lives. The economy needed to shift from war production to something new. And corporations, they were hungry to sell. But how do you sell to an entire nation at once? You don't just offer products, you offer a vision. A vision so powerful it reshapes identity itself. The answer came in the form of an idea: a perfect life, accessible to anyone who followed the rules. Work hard, be loyal, consume. The dream didn't just inspire, it directed. In 1944, the GI Bill opened the floodgates, granting veterans low-interest loans, affordable mortgages, and access to education. It was more than policy, it was fuel. By 1950, vast suburbs began to rise almost overnight. Levittown in New York became the model. Endless rows of nearly identical houses, white picket fences, manicured lawns. It looked like freedom. But it was also conformity, carefully packaged as choice. These houses were more than shelters. They were symbols, each one a billboard for a new kind of life: safe, clean, predictable. A nuclear family inside, a shiny car parked outside, and soon the glow of a television in every living room. But this transformation wasn't accidental. It was a campaign. Corporations like General Motors, General Electric, and countless others weren't just providing goods, they were writing the script. Advertisements didn't just sell washing machines, they sold the image of a perfect housewife whose worth depended on owning one. Car commercials didn't just show vehicles, they promised freedom, status, and masculinity in chrome and steel. It was a symphony of persuasion. Billboards shouted it from highways, magazines dressed it in glossy spreads, TV jingles etched it into memory. And the more people consumed, the more the dream seemed real. But this is where the story takes a darker turn, because the dream wasn't designed for everyone. Behind the smiles, an invisible hand decided who got to play and who was left out. Many veterans of color, despite fighting for their country, were denied the same benefits through discriminatory practices. Entire neighborhoods were marked undesirable through policies like redlining, shutting out minority families from the wealth-building suburban boom. The promise was clear: anyone can make it. The reality was selective, only if you fit the picture. And yet, people clung to the dream. After years of fear, loss, and sacrifice, who wouldn't? To believe was easier than to question. The dream became the air they breathed, so natural, so omnipresent that no one noticed it was being sold to them piece by piece. Every ad campaign, every corporate slogan, every Hollywood storyline fed the same idea. Success wasn't just possible, it was purchasable. Buy the house, buy the car, buy the life, and you'll finally belong. But belonging came at a cost. You weren't just buying things, you were buying into a system that decided what happiness looked like, and more importantly, Who was allowed to have it? The American dream was never about freedom. It was about control, elegant, profitable, invisible. Now take a second. Look at the world around you today. How much of what you believe is truly yours, and how much was planted there by someone selling you something? If you're starting to see the cracks in this perfect picture, you're exactly where you should be. And if you believe more people need to hear this, hit that like button, because the deeper we go, the more they'll wish you hadn't found this video. The only question left is, who built the dream you were told to chase, and why were they so desperate for you to never stop running? The dream was built, but a dream alone isn't enough. A dream fades unless it is repeated, reinforced, and burned into memory. For the illusion to work, it had to be everywhere, on the pages you read, in the songs you heard, and, most importantly, on the screens you watched. The 1950s were the decade of the screen. In 1950, only 9% of American homes had a television. By the end of that decade, the number had skyrocketed to nearly 90%. Within 10 years, a glowing box became the centerpiece of the American living room. Families gathered around it nightly, unaware they were not just being entertained, they were being programmed. Television shows didn't just fill time, they filled minds. Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, The Donna Reed Show. These weren't just sitcoms, they were blueprints. The perfect suburban father, the smiling housewife, the obedient children. Each episode quietly defined what life should look like, what happiness should be. It was not a mirror, it was a mold. And television was only one front in the campaign. Magazines like Life and Good Housekeeping displayed sparkling kitchens, beaming families, and slogans promising that the right product could make everything perfect. Hollywood films told stories of heroes who climbed the social ladder, always rewarded for playing by the rules. Even cartoons reinforced the idea that success was just one purchase or one promotion away. The formula was simple, but devastatingly effective. Repeat the image often enough, and people stop questioning it. They accept it. They chase it. They build their identities around it. But who was writing this script? Not the actors, not the directors. The true storytellers were advertisers. By the mid-1950s, corporations were spending billions not just to sell products, but to shape perception itself. Every commercial break was a lesson. Every billboard was an instruction. Every storyline was an advertisement disguised as entertainment. The brilliance of this system was its subtlety. There were no orders, no commands, just images, repeated endlessly until they became truth. A house stopped being shelter. It became proof of success. A car stopped being transportation. It became status. A television stopped being a device. It became an altar where the gospel of consumerism was preached night after night. And here's the unsettling part. The more the media told people what life should be, the less they asked why. When every screen tells the same story, doubt dies quietly. People stopped asking, "Is this real?" and started asking, "How do I get it?" Think about it. How do you control a society without force? You don't need armies, you don't need chains, you only need screens. Screens that whisper, "This is who you should be." And while millions were mesmerized by these glowing promises, cracks in the illusion began to form. Because no matter how perfect the images looked, not everyone could live them. Not everyone could afford the dream. Not everyone was even allowed to try. But the media didn't show the cracks. It didn't need to. The dream was never about reflecting reality. It was about manufacturing desire. Desire so strong, it blinded people to the truth behind the curtain. Ask yourself how much of what you want today is truly yours, and how much was planted there decades ago by someone who profits when you keep chasing. If you've started to see how deep this illusion runs, you're not just watching, you're waking up. Stay close, because the next part of this investigation will expose what they worked hardest to hide. Subscribe, not to follow a trend, but to stay inside this circle of truth. Once you're in, what comes next won't be so easy for them to bury, because what waits behind the screen is darker, deeper, and far more calculated than anyone was ever meant to see. The dream looked perfect from a distance. Endless suburbs, smiling families, new cars gliding down wide streets. But perfection has borders, and this dream was no exception. Because hidden beneath the glossy images was a line, an invisible line that decided who was allowed to live the dream and who was left outside. On paper, the GI Bill promised equal opportunity. In reality, it was anything but equal. While millions of white veterans secured low-interest loans to buy homes and build wealth, countless black veterans were quietly denied those same benefits. Banks refused their applications, real estate agents steered them away. Entire neighborhoods were closed off by a practice known as redlining, where maps marked minority communities in red, labeling them as high risk and unworthy of investment. The dream had rules, and those rules weren't written in laws, but in invisible barriers. Barriers that shaped where people could live, work, and send their children to school. Suburbs became a symbol of success, but they were also fortresses, protected by policies, prejudice, and profit. Minority families were pushed into underfunded neighborhoods, cut off from the wealth-building engine that suburban America had become. And it didn't stop there. Corporations, banks, and the government worked hand in hand to maintain this divide. Federal housing programs openly favored white home buyers. Developers like William Levitt explicitly banned black families from purchasing homes in their new communities, all while the advertising showed a dream for everyone. But the illusion had to stay clean. The screens never showed the locked doors. The magazines never photographed the neighborhoods left behind. Hollywood didn't tell the stories of families denied a chance to climb. The narrative remained pure. Work hard and you'll win. Yet the truth was brutal. For millions, no amount of hard work could break through a system designed to hold them back. By the 1960s, the cracks in the dream had grown. Civil rights protests erupted, challenging the lie that opportunity was equal. The same screens that once sold perfection now broadcasted chaos, marches, clashes, riots. For the first time, America was forced to confront the reality behind its own propaganda. The dream had a price, and not everyone was paying it in dollars. This invisible line didn't just divide neighborhoods, it divided futures. While some families accumulated wealth across generations, others were trapped in cycles of poverty, denied the same starting point. The dream was supposed to unite, but it became one of the greatest tools of separation. And still, the image persisted. The smiling families stayed on the billboards. The commercials kept playing. The story never changed. But when you understand who drew that line and why, they stopped calling it the American dream. Because dreams aren't supposed to be gated. And just when the illusion seemed impossible to break, something began to shift. The dream that had been sold for decades was about to face its greatest test yet. Because what happens when the people start to wake up? For decades, the dream held strong. It survived protests. It survived economic shifts. It even survived the truth slipping through the cracks. But nothing built on illusion lasts forever. By the 1970s and 80s, the world was changing, and the dream began to fracture. The suburbs that once symbolized success started showing signs of decay. Factories closed, jobs moved overseas. Families that had once believed in endless growth faced layoffs, foreclosures, and debt. The screens kept selling happiness, but for many, the dream was slipping out of reach. In the 1990s, the promise was repackaged. Credit cards became the new gateway. Buy now, worry later. Happiness wasn't just a house and a car anymore. It was anything you could swipe for. Debt became the new leash, and millions didn't even realize they were wearing it. Then came the 2000s. The housing boom reignited hope. Banks handed out loans like candy, telling families they could own the dream again. But in 2008, the bubble burst. Millions lost homes. Generational wealth evaporated overnight, and the dream revealed its sharpest edge. It wasn't built to protect you. It was built to protect the system. Meanwhile, inequality soared. The richest few grew richer than ever, while the middle class shrank, and the poor were pushed further to the margins. For the first time, people began to question openly, was the dream ever real? Or was it always just another product sold to keep you running in circles? Today, the cracks are no longer cracks, they're canyons. Student debt chains young generations to a future they can't afford. Housing costs soar beyond reach. The same corporations that once sold televisions now sell algorithms, shaping your desires with every scroll. The tools have changed, the manipulation hasn't. And yet, something else is happening. People are waking up. They're starting to see the pattern. They're asking questions that were once unthinkable. They're breaking free from the script. The dream they sold is dying, but not because they wanted to. It's dying because illusions can't last when enough people see through them. And so the question remains, when the old dream collapses, what takes its place? Will we build something real, or will they find a new illusion to sell? As the smoke clears, one thing is certain. The dream they sold was never yours to keep. And now that you've seen the truth, you'll never chase it the same way again. The American dream was never just a promise. It was a product, packaged, marketed, and sold for decades. It built cities, it built fortunes, but it also built walls no one was supposed to see. Now you've seen them. You've seen who drew the lines, who wrote the scripts, and who profited while millions chased an illusion. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The question isn't whether the dream was real. The question is what comes after it. Because when one illusion dies, another is always waiting to take its place. If this investigation opened your eyes, let it open others. Hit the like button, not as a gesture, but as a signal that you see through the lie. Subscribe, because the next secrets we uncover will take us even deeper into the systems they've kept hidden for decades. Stay sharp, stay curious, because the truth is never what they want you to believe.